All right. Well, again, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Um, Taking time out of your day for the second installment of our Expert Insight series with tonight's session titled Navigating the Future of Social Media Marketing and presented by Kelly Myers. So my name is Brian Gutierrez, and I develop and manage new programs for UW Continuum College. So before we dive in, I'd just like to take a moment to share a little bit about UW Continuum's fascinating history, which actually dates back until 1912. Since our founding, we have been dedicated to expanding the University of Washington's educational reach. And as you can see at the top of this slide, our programs support learners at every stage of life, from UW Youth and Teen programs and UW in high school to our international and English language programs, degree programs, and all the way to Osher Lifelong Learning Institute, which is programming for folks that are 50 years and older. And with that, our goal is to meet learners where they are and to provide meaningful educational opportunities that are tailored to their needs. The Expert Insights series showcases the incredible work of talented instructors from University of Washington's Professional and Continuing Education Unit. So our programs offer a range of learning opportunities from certificates to degrees where students gain access to built-in networks of industry professionals and engage in practical, up-to-date hands-on experiences. With flexible delivery formats, learning is possible anytime and anywhere. So whatever your goal, whether it's upskilling or reskilling or exploring an entirely new field, there's a class for that. And more importantly, there's a path for you. As I mentioned just a moment ago, our Expert Insights series is a free webinar series where our instructors share what's trending in their fields, the tools you need to be successful, and actionable career advice. So please stay tuned for more webinars from this series, not only in the coming months, but also we have a fabulous one coming up tomorrow evening as well. For this webinar, just a quick reminder to please enter your questions for Kelly in the Q&A, and she will answer them at the end of the presentation. So with that, it is my pleasure to introduce the presenter for tonight's Expert Insight series, the Navigating the Future of Social Media Marketing with Kelly Myers. So Kelly is a strategic and creative leader in social media with nearly 2 decades of experience in consumer strategy, digital marketing, and data-driven campaigns. Currently serving as the head of social and influencer at Autodesk, Kelly drives innovative approaches to engaging audiences and amplifying brand presence. Prior to Autodesk, she led the development of Microsoft's consumer social media vision and spearheaded global digital marketing initiatives at Starbucks. She also played a key role in shaping digital project strategy for retail at Disney. In addition to her industry experience, Kelly is an affiliate professor at the University of Washington, where she shares her expertise in digital marketing and social media strategy with aspiring professionals. With a master's degree in communication from the University of Washington, she's passionate about building and leading high-performing teams that deliver compelling brand stories through data-driven and audience-centered strategies. So with that, take it away, Kelly.
Thanks, Brian. I'm happy to be here tonight. I'm curious if any of you remember where you were the night of January 19th, 2025. It was a big deal for those of us who were sitting in the social media world. It was the night that TikTok went down. The week prior, or rather the weeks prior, were spent with every social media team, every manager, creator, influencer, agency, wannabe political pundit trying to figure out what to do when TikTok goes down. Surely this won't be a big deal. Surely this will not actually happen. Surely we will have a plan for Instagram and YouTube, right? We're ready, right? If you were living under a rock in January 2025, TikTok temporarily suspended its services in the US due to ByteDance, their parent company, refusal to divest before the deadline imposed by the Protecting Americans from Foreign Adversary Controlled Applications Act. The app was removed from major app stores, iTunes, Google as well, and users were unable to access content. If you were like me, you probably took screenshots of the language and the interstitial that popped up when you couldn't use TikTok, and then you kind of waited. When President Trump was inaugurated, he issued an executive order delaying the enforcement of the act for 75 days, leading to the restoration of TikTok and services in the US. Comically, one of the things that occurred in that was a lot of creators had come forward and showed how they sort of lied or faked what they were doing, which led to another lovely conversation around truth and authenticity and social. But it definitely was a big impact in one that switched a lot of strategies before they even got started. There are slim stats on what the impact was, but TikTok in 2023 estimated that they generated approximately $14 billion in ad revenue globally. On the other side, creators and influencers faced income losses as well. Those were harder to quantify, but when an app that has over 2 billion users globally and close to 1.7 billion monthly active users who spend on average 58 minutes, I feel like that's really low, by the way. But when that platform shuts down, it's probably a good time to evaluate the state of social in 2025. So with that, I've got 6 hot takes for you in 2025. As Brian mentioned, my name is Kelly Myers. I have done digital marketing and social media for a very long time. And it's a space that I love to play in, I love to create in, I love to sit in, but it's one that I find interesting and fascinating no matter what. From creative to platforms to censorship, the impact that social has on the world is one that has in brands and marketers as well, who are just trying to stay afloat sometimes. The best brands in 2025 won't chase trends, hack algorithms, or try to go viral for the sake of it. They'll understand that content is more than just a post, it's a business tool. Yes, creative is subject. Yes, algorithms shift. And yes, short form video is non negotiable. But brands that succeed will focus on the right platforms, understand the tension between censorship and community, treat creators as partners, not just assets, and recognize that being unhinged isn't actually a strategy, it's a distraction. So, if you take anything away from this tonight, do note that social media isn't just about playing the game, it's about playing the long game. And with that, we'll start with number one. Hot take number one is that creative is always subjective. Also, if I'm explaining it to you, it's probably meant that you shouldn't be evaluating it. I've worked my entire career in digital marketing, product development, e-commerce, social media. It's all been online. And one of the really beautiful components of a digital system is that you can collect data. There's metadata, there's conversation data, there's data on who does what, there's action data, all of it. Suddenly, any creative that's being shared is going through the lens of those networks that can be categorized as useful or not useful without really having anybody weigh in on whether or not the creative is beautiful or lovely or intriguing. Simply the flow of how something is chosen to be liked or commented, shared, reposted, duetted, or stitched. If you create content for social media, you're well positioned to realize that only the people who matter, the people who you should be creating content for ultimately, are your audiences, period. When you invite in the email marketing team to look at the content, or the web team, or that one executive who is dying to be a LinkedIn influencer, you're doing so at the risk of pushing away the people who actually hit follow on your account and your platform. And so my hot take is this: if I have to explain it to you, you probably shouldn't be looking at it. And your feedback matters less than the people who actually want to talk to me online and in the comments and in the conversations. If you're not paying attention to social all the time, you're probably not in the space to use it often. This is why questions like, how often have you thought of the Roman Empire? Or if I said to you, I like my suitcase, will either get chuckles or you're going to go look them up because you don't understand what they are, which is fine. But the examples I'm showing you here are ones that came in and they were creative that I hate. And it's my favorite story to tell because I think it really shows the team and the work that they did. I used to manage the consumer social team at Microsoft, and one of the campaigns we did was one called the Edgehog. And so this cute, adorable hedgehog that you see was born out of a photo shoot and an insight. The insight was that people who followed Edge also liked small animals. What's a small animal? A hedgehog. What rhymes with edge? Hedge. And here we have the hedgehog. I hated the idea. I was like, whatever, do it. Let's just make it happen. I'm not going to stand in your way because the team was really excited. And so we did it. And so one day we brought a hedgehog onto the grounds of Microsoft and did a photo shoot. We made all of the props. We did all of the cute little pieces and parts. We took very good care of the hogs. And when we did, this is what we ended up with, this campaign. The campaign surpassed all of our content benchmarks for the year. There were 6 pieces of content and they just blew it out of the water. In fact, the top post earned 25 times more impressions than our normal content and 49 times more engagements. Ultimately, the whole piece ended with 3.2 million impressions, driving almost 540,000 in earned media value. So we didn't pay for what we got a lot, which was great, all for a cute hedgehog. My hot take number 2 is that social media is changing. You'll hear that. People will say that. It's fast. It's changing all the time. It's doing things differently. And it is. It's true. This is not, oops. This is nothing new. The truth is that the algorithms are what change, right? This is what it's trying to do. In the last few months alone, we've seen Instagram shake up the profile layouts. They're now no longer just classic squares. They're now vertical ones. So cautious on that one. They've also got trial Reels features where you can test out some of the changes you want to make. Threads lets users schedule posts and track performance more easily. They're becoming a little bit more sophisticated in that place. All of that means that the algorithms continue to change. It also feels like they're messing with us sometimes, not going to lie. When TikTok came online, the algorithm favored different actions than Instagram or X. And so suddenly we had different ways that we as professionals were trying to actually break in and break the algorithms in our favor. I would say that there are 3 differences in how TikTok, as well as Instagram Meta overall, and then Twitter showcase that. For TikTok algorithm, I would call it the ultra personalized content discovery. The whole point is to see the For You page. It's highly predictive. It looks at your user engagement signals, things like watch time, replays, likes, shares, and comments. Pro tip, don't leave your phone on the counter. Scrolling through horse videos, you will end up on Big John Rescue Horse TikTok, which is where I have been since 2020. I hate it. I don't mind it, but I don't ride horses. I don't even like them. They do a lot of content-based discovery. They look at it for content first. So if things are interesting, that's what will pop up first. They weight the engagement. The watch time is far more important than follower count, which is why you'll see single videos with millions of views on an account that has 100 followers. And then anything that really has to do with audio trends will get higher ranking within the TikTok algorithm. When it comes to Instagram, when it's true for Facebook and Threads as well, they prioritize posts from your friends and your followed accounts first while factoring in other engagement things. So it's not like it's all one or the other, but the algorithm has all those pieces together with it. They're trying to balance the social connections that you already have in place, which you've chosen to create, with what would be a discovery process for you. They do prioritize multiple algorithm layers because things like stories are different than in feed, they're different than reels, and all of them actually end up with different algorithmic pushes. And then finally, ad and shopping. So they definitely have a shopping focus for Instagram, trying to get people to purchase things. Lastly, it comes to Twitter. Their Twitter, the algorithm for that is around interest, virality, and network effects. So it's the For You versus following. They definitely split the recommendations based on who you're following, what could be interesting for you. Virality and engagement. They boost content with high engagement in a short period. They really push relevancy and immediacy because they do consider themselves continuing to be a news cycle, a news platform. So when you think about how you're going to actually create content, you have to think differently about all of these pieces and parts because they're all going to have a different piece. TikTok will be that discovery focused piece. Instagram is social plus shopping. And then X is that virality plus recency. Things to keep in mind as you're thinking about the algorithms. Next up is short form is mandatory. So short form video came on point with all of the TikTok work, more so than I think any other platform. So the hot take here is that video has killed the radio star, which we all know, and I'm very dated for using that as an analogy. But video content continues to dominate social media with platforms like TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube leading user engagement. Both short form and long form videos are getting traction, which really reflects users' diverse content preferences. The integration of AI has continued to transform it further, which makes it easier to create content, curate content, and enable more personalized user experiences. LinkedIn is getting in on it now. They're leaning into vertical video. You'll see that most social media happens on mobile, it happens on your device. And so it makes that scroll pattern much more familiar, like TikTok or Reels. Short form video is mandatory. It's a requirement. There's no way that we can't not use at this point in time. And it's more or less about length because even I've seen videos pop off at 10 seconds, so I has it at 60 seconds. But it's really about context and how it's flipped everything on its side, production, engagement, where you put the hook, where you put branding. You don't have time for a lot of those things. And so trying to think through what makes the most sense to go in this very small piece of content right now. So when you have format around short form versus long form video, short form is anything under 60 seconds. Oftentimes it's under even less than that. So imagine trying to put a story or a message in 6 seconds. That's what it's trying to do. Long form is anything that shows up like this. This is long form content, a webinar, YouTube, sometimes the TV components can all be in that long form space. The consumption behavior is different, right? Short form is for passive scrolling. This is where you're sitting down, kind of just moving through, looking at things, quick dopamine hits, very addictive. And it's really around just what content is. People rarely search for that short form content. The algorithm is just serving it to you. Long form really is that intentional engagement. This is committed time. This is a podcast. This is a YouTube deep dive. This is even a 10-minute TikTok video if you've ever watched one. They also then change in how they think about algorithms and discovery. So short form is highly algorithmic. It's prioritizes watch time, completion rate. It's made to beat the system. And users don't need to follow accounts to see that content. Other formats, however, do have that social based and social sharing. So think SEO around YouTube is a really big one, hashtags, recommendations. And this is where follower count and community matter more for them than for the reach of that piece of content. The content purpose, so short form is really good for brand awareness and engagement, cute for trends, viral moments. Long form is really good for deep dives, product updates, storytelling, vlogs, things like that. Monetization for both of them is interesting. It's harder to monetize short form. It's got low ad revenue just because, again, like it's very quick, really good for influencer marketing. And long form has a stronger monetization effort. Watch longer, you get more time for ads, more time for subscriptions, more time for sponsorships. So short form is always going to be there because it's this discovery first, viral, potential lower commitment. I would say that lo-fi versus hi-fi doesn't weigh into this anymore because I've seen really beautiful high fidelity content and videos that are like 16 seconds. But the winning strategy really for any team who's doing this is to combine both. Think about your short form for awareness, but think about your long form for loyalty and monetization. Not all platforms are created equal. This is always a good hot take for everybody. Per Brandwatch recently, adults use an average of 7 different social networks each month. That's based on insights. Those platforms could differ wildly. Some of the platforms that are on this slide here don't exist. Some of them exist in different forms. Some of them you wouldn't even have them together. And so you can start to see where people spend time and how platforms can be used or not used. But you can't be everywhere, and nor do you have to be everywhere. I think that's the part that makes it so frustrating to watch for a lot of brands, as they end up in places where I don't think that they need to be. I had the chance to lead the team when we were looking at launching into TikTok with Microsoft, and that was with the Windows social team. Windows is the operating system for almost every PC in the world. It's huge. It's got billions and billions of users, but it's an operating system. It has a lot of beloved brand value. We were getting ready to push out a new updated version of Windows called Windows 11, and we decided that that was the moment for us to go ahead and try TikTok as well. We had been wanting to get into it. This is, at the end of 2020. A lot of brands had gone on to TikTok. A lot had fallen off of TikTok. It was still felt very loose, and we weren't quite sure how to use it. But we thought this is the moment that we could do this, and we were going to take a chance on it. At that same time, there was a creator by the name of Emily Zagay who was doing these incredibly ironic and yet unironic revamps of logos for corporations. And so we asked her every day if she would redo the Windows logo. She was the only person we followed. This was all part of the strategy. And every day we posted and asked her to please, do the Windows logo. It took a little bit of time, enough time that there was a moment where we sort of looked around each other and thought, did we make a mistake? Are we going too far? But she finally actually redid the Windows logo for us, and we were ready. We had a deep fake of putting the logo design that she had created onto one of our stores, and it went back and forth on some really wonderful banter. In the 8 months that we had it up and going that year, we ended up having 1 million followers, which was cool. That strategy plus the content we were creating made for a really strong effort that still to this day is doing really beautiful content, beautiful work. I think it's at 2.6 million followers now, with over 20 million likes, which is insane. All of the work with Emily brought us over 130 million earned impressions. That was all done in sort of a back and forth between us, which was great. I often see other brands trying to scramble to keep up and keep on different platforms. And what I would say to anybody who's looking to do it is just to be simple, keep it simple, and go where your audience is. If your audience is not on TikTok, you don't need to be on TikTok. Instead, you're just opening up places that are actually brand endpoints, that you're putting yourselves at risk for just being used, or just not being used at all, because then no one's there to actually take care of it. So be thoughtful about where you put your content and follow your audiences. Another piece that I'm seeing a lot of right now is the idea of creators as employees. I would say that probably 20 years ago, we're going to talk a long time, there was a really big push in early days of social where you saw a lot of folks who were employees of a brand who then started in social and started to be almost spokespeople of that brand. A really iconic one for us in the area is Major Nelson, and his impact on the Xbox brand. When he started out early on, it was around being an advocate for Xbox Live. And so he was able to share more in his blog, later in a podcast that he did, but really building that direct connection between gamers and the Xbox brand. He was able to really build out the community engagement strategy, making it feel personal. People knew him as a gamer in the space. He was sharing what he was doing as well as his passion for the brand itself. He established Xbox Live as a core platform because he was a public figure. Players trusted him. They knew that he was there to help them do this work, to play, to be gamers, to be in the space of Xbox. He became a spokesperson for Xbox in a lot of places, in trade shows, E3, live streams. He helped them navigate some PR challenges and really strengthened overall the social presence. I would say in the last 10 years, I've seen more companies move away. And so they sort of obfuscate who is actually behind their social. You might see things like a DM from Sarah, or tweets by Brad, which was something that we had done at Starbucks. But now it's down to a spot where it feels like there's less of somebody who is an iconic brand representative and somebody instead who's more behind part of a team piece. But we're changing. There's a moment. It's happening right now. A lot of brands are looking at who is making content successfully, and content successfully being made is really from creators. And so content creators are sort of these really great, interesting characters who have the ability to film, to tape, to do podcasts. They've got probably some sort of graphic design background. They're in on the trends. They almost think of themselves like a reporter. They're looking to see what's happening and what's new and what's noteworthy. And so you'll see a lot more people who are working as content creators and a lot more companies who are bringing them on board full time. The recognized space that I have here, one of them is the person on the left works for AARP, and he has been doing their TikToks for a while now. And then, of course, the Duolingo owl, who I think is dead now. But it might not be. They might be coming back to life. I'm not quite sure what their strategy is going to be. But it's now interesting to see really iconic one-to-one relations in creative, because creators are now becoming employees. Finally, my last hot take is the one that is probably not quite that controversial, but it's certainly something that I think always makes me a little curious as to why it continues to move forward. So, being unhinged is not a strategy. And so I was questioning the business impact of Nutter Butter's recent unhinged social media play. They had some pretty chaotic meme-heavy posts that drive engagement, but I was curious, did it actually sell more cookies? So they were definitely going forward, creating these different memes, these different videos, pieces of content. It's true that high engagement will create and grow brand relevance. What's interesting though is, do those viral moments then make for long-term success? If anybody works for the Nutter Butter folks, let me know. I'd love to ask that question. But what they're trying to do is appeal to Gen Z and to internet culture. Some brands believe that being weird and absurd really makes the Gen Z and younger audiences, Gen Alpha, Gen Beta, who spend more time on these places, find those brands relevant to them. But if the brand's core audience isn't actually Gen Z, does that strategy make sense? That's the part that's always interesting to me. So impulse snacks like Nutter Butter, they're really not high consideration purchases, right? If you're going to walk into the store and grab some cookies, you might as well grab some of them. But I don't know if the work that they're doing online translates to standing in the cookie aisle and choosing what treat you're going to have. There are other brands that do some of this unhinged behavior. They're not good, not bad. They're just in different ways. One of them is Wendy's. Wendy's definitely has leaned into roasting as a key part of their brand equity. They'll roast you if you want. Duolingo has done this as well with some of the work they've done with the owl. I think in one of their videos last year, I think the owl got a BBL, which was hilarious and love that. And then Slim Jim has some interesting things. But I don't know whether or not Nutter Butter does anything to actually sell more cookies, what they're trying to do. So sometimes when you see these things, I'm always curious too, is it the internal team pushing for viral moments? Was there an insight that led to this? It might be the right KPI, which is engagement, and maybe this is what's happening. But I think sometimes these big brands overstep and miss the issue that while social on its own is interesting and cool, it really should tie back into what you're trying to do as a brand overall and what that brand marketing piece is. Social media without a business goal can just be noise sometimes. And I think that's where you start to see whether or not social gets the diligence and the earnestness it deserves, or if it ends up being kind of a toss away or throwaway. I think that their approach was a little bit gimmicky. I don't know if there was a conversion funnel associated with it. I'm not sure if there was anything around product launches or limited edition flavors or any in-store activations that would sort of connect this online to what happens down the grocery store aisle. But it was entertaining for people, that's for sure. I just don't know if it moved any of the product off the shelves. So I think my final take for you is this. Social media without a business goal is really just noise. Nutter Butters felt like a gimmick with no follow through. It's a little bit random for randomness sake, which might be entertaining, but I'm not sure if it actually connects back to the shelves. At the end of the day, social media is always evolving, but the fundamentals remain the same. Attention is the currency, creativity wins, and strategy does matter. So when you think about what you're going to be doing this next year, consider creative is going to be subjective, always, always, always. And while you might not like it, it might actually work really well for your audiences. Algorithms are always changing. Stay up to date on them. Make sure that your analyst is paying attention. We recently posted a piece of content that actually went really well, but we posted on a Saturday, which goes against how more B2B brands think about content, which is an interesting insight. We'll hang on to it and see what happens. Short form video is mandatory. You have to be able to do it and you have to be comfortable in it. You have to be okay with the fact that you're going to get some brand recognition off of your name of your account on the platform, but you might not be able to get in an end card or a link or something else. And so understanding what that engagement looks like for those pieces is important. Not all platforms are equal. Just because there's a platform does not mean you need to be there. Watch Blue Sky, watch Threads, watch, all of who's coming up. It's different. It's a very interesting time and space to think about those platforms and what they're doing, but your brand might not need to be in every single one of them. And if it's one that's losing ground for you, it's not engaging, pivot out of it and rethink about it. The resourcing and social is still based on people. And so having somebody out running and doing the content, commenting, engaging with your users in the community, it's important to note that they're in communities that are supportive of what you're trying to do for your goals. Creators as employees, this is one that is interesting to see. It's one that's cool to kind of understand where it goes and what happens next. But I'm curious to see how it plays out for a lot of these companies. I like seeing the personal effect. I like seeing people come on board. I think it's actually really cool to actually have folks who represent the brand fully. It'll be fun to see how that kind of plays out. And then finally, being unhinged really is not a strategy. There are certainly things that happen amongst those of us in the social space where we get excited when we see each other post content that feels like it's ripe for other social media managers. One that I will share is I can't remember what year it was, and I wish I'd written it down, but Amtrak posted on X one word. The word was trains. And so the rest of us in social jumped on board And I know for Surface, was one of the other brands I did, we wrote laptops, Windows. So there are all these kind of fun ways to do that. There are certainly some fun things that feel very much like we're talking into the echo chamber of other social media community managers. I don't mind that part. It's some of the unhinged stuff that I'm just like, okay, not sure where that's going or what we're going to do. But we're all in this space, to make sure that we're creating conversation. Sometimes the conversation should be beneficial to the brand and it should be something connected to it. And if you're going to go out and play in these stunt spaces, what does it actually mean back to the business that you're trying to drive? Because ultimately, that's what we're all trying to do. So at the end of the day, social media will continue to evolve, even though we're in Q1 of 2025. I would say that these are all still relatable and still relative to anybody looking to drive social this year. The fundamentals remain the same. Attention, currency, creativity wins, and strategy matters. So I guess you should ask yourselves, as I ask myself, are you creating social content just to keep up? Or are you building something that lasts? Which is funny to ask because there is such an ephemeral quality to social, but you have to understand that everything you're doing should hang together at some point. It all should come back together. I would stop chasing engagement for engagement's sake. I would start owning your narrative, make some bold creative choices, and invest in content that actually delivers business results and business value. Because in 2025, I do believe that the brands that treat social like an afterthought will get left behind. The ones that think like media companies, cultural curators, and community builders, they will win. So with that, I am done with my pro portion of the presentation, and I would love to open it up for any questions, Brian.
Yeah, it looks like, Kelly, that we have two really great questions in the Q&A. Do you want to take the top one first, and I'll
I
publish
will do
that?
that. I will do that. I'm going to, this is the part where it's embarrassing. I've lost my face. Y'all, I don't know where I am anymore. Hold on just a
So,
second. I can find the screen.
so I will go ahead and read that first question. So,
That's a
for
question
a
for you.
fitness app of a major celebrity, we're having success on Instagram. Our goal is to increase followership by 30% in all channels. What channels do you recommend us to expand to create?
Oh my gosh, I love that. Let me go look at it again because I was listening to you and looking. Okay, so fitness app, major celebrity, success on Instagram. Interesting. So here's what I would say. You obviously are doing well on Instagram, which tells me that you probably have a Gen Z or younger millennial audience demographic, which may be where your celebrity is potentially. Um, I like Instagram for this. I also like YouTube for this, because I think you can play in that space of short form video and attention on Instagram, but I think you can create that subscription base on YouTube. I would also look at Substack right now. They're doing some really interesting things when it comes to newsletters and content creation and curation as well. So all of those places are interesting. But I think it all goes back to what is the goal? Is the goal to drive followers? Is the goal to have folks download the app itself? And so understanding where some of those app download success campaigns can happen is interesting. I would say that if it is driving um, any of your actual download goals, putting some paid behind that. We didn't talk about paid in tonight's conversation, but putting a little bit of paid behind that to actual drive some of that will be interesting. That'll be a cool one to do. So yeah. I would say stay in Instagram. That one's great. But probably look at YouTube and Substack.
And then there's the second one. I heard something recently that the algorithms are set up to allow fear, anger, and hate to spread more quickly. I love this question. How might we push the algorithms for more community supportive advocacy and disseminate facts over disinformation?
Yeah, no, that's a heavy one right now, right? This is the time that we're in. So I would say yes. I don't know specifically what algorithms are set up to do. No one will tell you, right? You're never going to get a straight answer of this algorithm is made to do this or it's made to do that, et cetera, things like that. Um, what I will say, however, is that they definitely are going for engagement, and we as humans tend to engage in those types of content just naturally, right? You're gonna step up for the fight. You're gonna lean in for something that feels controversial. So be diligent about owning what you see in social. Delete the ads, change the algorithm, change the information, move content around, say when things you don't like things. Be proactive in managing that space to manage your own mental health when it comes to being online. And take breaks. Please take breaks. Just because I work in social media doesn't mean I'm on my phone all day long. A lot of the time I am, but not all the time. So take those breaks and cultivate what makes the most sense for you. Hide things that don't. Report things that you think are false or untrue. Make it a space that feels safe for you to be in, knowing that the algorithm and the platform is pushing you to do things that might be more controversial because it's then gets more eyeballs. Those eyeballs then create ad revenue. Ad revenue then funds the company. So you can step out of that hamster wheel by being really clear on how you're curating your feed for yourself.
That's great. Got another one here. Are hashtags still relevant?
Oof, no, no, yes, no, no. I say no, but I'll tell you why I say no. It's because TikTok just munged all that up, just like squished everything together and made it all weird. So when TikTok came out, folks were trying to crack the algorithm and trying to crack what was happening. And it was really the audio, right? It was the trending sounds and songs. And those are the things that were actually pushing people to do more. But folks thought, well, if I have this hashtag on it, it'll make sense. And so brands and people and creators alike were creating their own hashtags. And then suddenly your hashtag would get put on everything that had nothing to do with it anymore. And so when you pulled up a hashtag, you saw these incredible results, knowing that actually none of it was relevant to what you were trying to do. I think hashtags are relevant on certain platforms. I think that X still has a strong hashtag piece. Instagram never really has, although people do use them. It's not the easiest thing. TikTok, they're not quite there. I'm going to say no. I'm going to say hashtags. I'm going to put them on the back burner. They're on ice for 2025.
That's great. Yeah, thanks for that.
Yeah.
Then we have another one coming in. I'm a contractor specializing in high-rise condos, tenant improvements here in Seattle and the East Side areas. What channels should I be using to attract new clients?
Paid channels. So trying to grow new business within organic social is always a big net. It's a big cast hoping to do things, but using paid is going to be really interesting. So you're a contractor in high-rise condo tenant improvements, and so you're looking for new folks. Yeah. So I think it would be things. Nextdoor is an app that probably makes a lot of sense in that space because it's hyper local. If there are Facebook groups that are relevant to where and what you're looking at, those would be good too. And then anything that is a newsletter or has a blog would be helpful because you're going to be needing folks who are very tight within a physical radius, I would assume.
Great. We have another one here. How do you feel, quote, X from Sarah, rather, from X company, end quote, will be received, given that there is always a question if the response is from AI rather than a person? Or do you feel the younger generations don't care?
Interesting. Um, I think we all assume right now that there probably isn't somebody who's actually helping you. It's probably AI. However, most platforms are required to tell you if that is an assistant or if it's actually somebody who's there. I think at the end of the day, as long as you get what you need from somebody, I think it makes sense. And a lot of the messaging bots within, for example, Meta, they're getting smart. They're really getting quite sophisticated. And so I don't know if the personalization matters quite as much. I've never really looked to see whether or not, Gen Z or Gen A is as concerned if it's a person or if it's just they got the help that they need. But that's a curious question.
Next, how are you using AI for social media at the moment? Which AI tools are you liking for social?
Yeah, no, that's a good one. So I do use AI. I am a big fan of ChatGPT in terms of an ideation, kind of a brainstorming brain dump. As Brian mentioned, I work for Autodesk. For those of you who don't know, Autodesk is a software company, and you might have heard our biggest product is AutoCAD. And so we are how the world gets made. It's pretty incredible to think about, but our software is that which helps with construction and manufacturing. We even do game design and CGI for films, things like that. So it's kind of crazy. Like there's a lot out there. And so I try to balance what we could do across the board when it comes to the content that my team creates and produces. And one of the areas that always does really well for a lot of B2B places is the idea around nostalgia. So I don't know all the nostalgia there is for construction, for architecture, for games, for film, etc. And so what I will tend to do is sort of put in a prompt that says like, give me 10 ideas for how, a nostalgic moment between, on a construction site or in a manufacturing, situation. And so then they'll give a question and we all sort of sit around our writer's room and talk about what makes sense. So I use it in terms of the like, get me started, get me out of the staring at a blank piece of paper, give me something different to think about. So that's how I'm using it right now at the moment. I'm not using it for creation of anything. I am teaching this class starting in April, and one of the modules is on AI creation for social. I'm really excited because I've been playing with a lot of tools, and I think it's really powerful for probably smaller brands or newer brands to have that access. But right now, I use ChatGPT, and I use it as an ideation kind of brainstorming. I also use it for agendas. I do not like agendas and I have to do all these offsites. And so I will say, hey, we're going to do an offsite for 10 people for 3 days. We want to talk about forecast, finances, you name it. How do I do it with breaks? And it'll give me an agenda. And that's one of my favorite ways to use it.
I love that that practical application. That's great.
Yeah.
So another great question here. Do you think Blue Sky Social is the next big thing for higher education marketing?
Mm. I don't think anything's the next big thing for higher education marketing. And I think Blue Sky Social is one where it's cool. I'm waiting for it to kind of crack open. A lot of the platforms will create first the tool sets for individual users and brands second. So Blue Sky doesn't quite yet have a brand component to it. It's one that we're watching and waiting, similar to how we do with TikTok. But I don't think it's the next big thing. I think it's a thing. But I think a lot of the platforms that are trying to compete against X, Blue Sky, and Threads, is that X has such uh, familiar use cases that folks understand how it works. And then Blue Sky and Threads are a little bit different. So trying to figure that out.
Another great question here. I've heard that organic is 90% more difficult in 2025. Is paid the only way to succeed in social media today?
So I'm going to bust that myth. What I will say is organic is difficult in that it's going to, you have to have different goals for organic than you do for paid. For paid, I can make sure that my content gets to everybody who's on this call today. I can say, great, I'm going to pay money. I'm going to hit these target demographics. You will all see that content. Organic means I've done a good job and you're following it because you want to follow my stuff. Um, so there are different reasons to be there, but they both need to be there. You can't have a really strong paid campaign. You can't have a really strong influencer campaign if you don't have a strong organic presence to scaffold that piece. And if you don't have good organic, you're not actually building community, right? You can't build community through ads. So they both go together. They just have different goals. And I think that's one of the conversations I have nonstop with executives in my company and past companies and other companies where organic and paid go together. They're not ever going to solve for one another, but they are complementary, but they do have different goals. And as long as you're aware of that, I don't think organic's hard. It's just that it's not going to get you the same goal. Like you're not going to reach the same people if you put a little paid behind it. But you can be smart with your paid and be surgical about how actually you use it.
And how about this? What are your thoughts of social shareables that have overlay text versus lifestyle photos?
I'm not quite sure what that one means, but I'm going to guess. I think if the photo doesn't have anything on it that has an overlay or social or a brand or something, um, it might not be as relevant as just being a photo itself. I'm a little confused on that one, but Karina, if you want to drop in another one and help me understand a little bit what you're asking, I can give you a better answer.
And then next, how would an aspiring social media marketer who prefers privacy handle being the face of a company if they don't want to be? What is your advice on tackling that with an employer?
So I think it's important to note, okay, first of all, don't take the job you don't want to take. Yeah, don't do that. But secondly, I would say if you're being hired as a content creator, that's part of the role. You probably shouldn't be applying for that role. If you're being asked to be the face after the fact, um, I would have a very sincere conversation with them that you are not willing to risk your privacy. Maybe there are other ways that you can do it. Maybe there are the people at the company who would like to be on camera. But you shouldn't have to do that if you don't want to be. Certainly, I wouldn't. So if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn later, I can help you with some actual scripts on how to tackle that. But unless you're being hired as the content creator and the face of the brand, I would push back on that one.
Kelly, I think this is a perfect one for you too. Obviously, they all have been, but this one too. How do this? I do socials for a dog rescue. What do you recommend?
Okay, right now, if you follow the Seattle Humane Society Instagram, they're killing it. It's the cutest thing ever. There are a couple of TikTok creators I follow who also have dog rescues. And I think one, if you love dogs, right? It's going to be really easy to do. But there's this one person on TikTok who does this really cute piece. They pick up these giant pit bulls. And whenever they do, they say, "Look, we've got a new pitopotamus." And they talk about the dog itself. So I think for dog rescue, you've got a lot of beautiful ways because you have dogs, which are always going to be pulling at heartstrings and emotional. But go look at the Seattle Humane Society Instagram. They're doing a really cute job, I think, in showcasing one, the need for what they have and what they are trying to do as a mission for the organization, but two, getting those dogs out and adopted. So it's pretty sweet.
That's great. We have Karina actually back with some great follow-ups there. Thanks, Karina. So
Okay,
I mean,
thank
as in
you.
visual assets, and yes, what type of visual assets perform best that are not short format video?
Yeah, that's going to be dependent on you and your brand. So if you're sharing, and you'd have to just try, right? I would just basically try it out. I would go, great, for the next 3 months, we're going to do 50-50 on video and photography. And we're going to do half that photography with text overlay and half without, and see where the engagement is. Again, like I said earlier, the beauty is you should be able to watch where people gravitate towards and use that. So I would test it out that way. But thank you.
That's great. So we have another one here. My business Facebook was compromised. I have not been able to get it back. Should I
Oh,
start over with Facebook or begin with new platform? My
Lord, I'm
brand,
so
Art of the
sorry.
Soul Jewelry, is about spiritual journey and inner strength.
I will say that the Facebook compromised account stories are deep and lengthy, and they occur to a lot of brands. I would start by asking whether or not Facebook is the right place for you to be. So maybe Facebook is not driving business. If it is, then go and continue to petition Facebook to get it back. You can also start to get new followers on a slightly different or new handle. Um, you might go try Instagram and see what happens. You might just kind of jump over there and go first. I've been liking Instagram a lot recently. It's doing really well. Facebook's been less engagement driven for us, but Instagram has been good. So you might try that and see how it goes. And good luck. It's one of the underbelly dirty secrets of Facebook is that for some reason it always gets compromised.
Kelly, we've got another great question here. How would you advise organizations to assess divestment and X and migration to Blue Sky or Threads or other platforms?
So I tend to be a little bit more cautious in these areas because I think, especially with the current political landscape, what you do or don't do on X can be seen as being a statement. I would just kind of put that out there. And so honestly, it comes down to, is your audience on X Do you see the right level of engagement and community within X itself? And if so, great, keep at it. And then start testing. Start taking some of that content, trying it on Blue Sky, trying it on Threads, starting to see where it is. You do not yet have the sheer volume of monthly active users from X onto any other platform right now. Threads did a really smart thing where they had all of us who have Instagram have Threads, so you can go get it. But it's more of a test and pull because you have to rebuild your audience on a new platform, and that's an undertaking, and it requires um, consistency when it comes to publishing content and participating in the community there. So it would be, I would look through and see what is X doing for you these days, and then start trialing or testing out on Blue Sky and Threads.
Kelly, I'm going to jump to a different question here that's a little bit towards the bottom, just in the interest of time. And that's a great question. I'm asking at the same time, Kelly, if you could possibly share the slide deck one more time
Of course.
and specifically the slide about your upcoming course, because that's the question. Somebody joined a little bit late and heard that you are teaching an upcoming course. And so we can talk briefly about that. And I'll take this moment also just to let everybody know that again, this is being recorded. You'll receive the recording and the slide deck here within the next few days after attending. So we appreciate that. And then I'm going to show you just two quick slides. Again, we have the specialization coming up here in social media marketing, and that course starts on the 2nd of April. We do have an information session that's actually scheduled for tomorrow evening at 6 p.m. If you'd like to join that. But the course in general is 12 weeks in length. You do receive a digital badge at the end of it, and you'll be able to master social media marketing fundamentals from audience engagement to analytics. You're going to gain hands-on experience with tools like Sprinkler and Sprout, learn to create some content, manage campaigns, and navigate legal and ethical considerations to build a strong online presence. And I don't know if you wanted to, add on a couple things there as well, Kelly.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's exciting. So this is the first time we've done a course like this, and I've been deep in curriculum development, and everything that Brian just shared is true. It's everything from platform strategies to content strategy, working with influencers, managing crisis communications when it comes to social, AI and social, which is an exciting one, and we'll talk a lot about measurement and analytics. So it covers a really wide range. But I think it does so in a way that will give you some good conversations, good hands-on experience, as well as some good guest speakers. There are a couple of folks from brands who will be joining us to share their POV and their experiences. So I'm excited about it, and it's going to start here in what, a month? If a month, yeah, the 2nd of April. So
Yeah, a little
I'll
bit
be
less
excited.
than that. Yeah, it is. It's really exciting. And then if we could just share, just in that interest of time, just to let everybody know, there is another webinar tomorrow night. That's featuring Andy Tosh and Matt Bennett. Again, and this is titled Editing in AI, and that is from 5 to 6 p.m. tomorrow night. So you can go ahead and um, view that as well. And we hope to see you there. But we have about 7 minutes left. And so with that, we can jump back into questions here because we have about 4 or 5 more questions that keep coming. This is fantastic. Kelly, somebody's asking, what's your favorite subscription or voice to follow to get updates on trends and social media product updates?
Yeah. Oh, that's a good question. So, there are a couple of folks on LinkedIn that I like to follow. What I also did recently was I wrote myself a co-pilot to deliver all the updates and news to me. So did that. But a lot of the platforms, so Brandwatch, Sprout Social, eMarketer has some good stuff. There are a couple of individuals that have some interesting things they talk about. But the truth is, for social, I think a lot of it just kind of sits in the space of being in it. Like I said, it changes a lot. And so just understanding what it means and where it goes is really interesting. Plus, you have to think of it from a brand perspective versus your personal perspective. Personally, you're going to have different conversations and interesting ideas and communities that you're building versus what you're doing for a brand. So there are a couple that I just sort of poke around with and follow.
How about this? How do I optimize my social media shop, like on Instagram or Etsy, to increase sales directly from my page?
I have absolutely no idea. I have never. So a lot of the e-commerce work I've done for brands was pre social and pre some of the Instagram pieces, and they certainly went on Etsy. Um, I've not seen the social media shops. I'm assuming that there's probably going to be within their own documentation, probably something that will help you with that. And it's same that I said to the earlier conversation, try things differently. Maybe how you think about photography. One of the things that I did when I was at Disney, this one was that's something that's helpful when we shop and we look at, catalog photography, it's usually very earnest around the product, right? So if I was going to sell you this mug, then you want to know how big is the mug, what size is it, what does it fit, et cetera, things like that. But that's a really cold way to sell something that's a lifestyle product. And so we had taken a line of Winnie the Pooh products, and instead of doing a catalog shoot of like, here's a blanket, here's a pillow, here's a crib, we actually created a picnic with Pooh. And so the scene was then all the pieces that you could purchase, slippers, a blanket, a cute stuffed animal, but done like you were on a picnic with Pooh, which is really cute. So you might start to think about what are some of the scenarios that can showcase the lifestyle impact of what you have without being quite so there's a place for photography that shows you dimension and size, but there might be a way to romanticize and storytell a little bit before people get to your page to purchase something.
That's great. Next one. How does a content creator, face of a brand, leave a company without owning, taking the content, followers, or do they?
You don't. That's the one that's really interesting. So when you sign up to be a content creator or face of the brand, everything you're going to be doing probably, again, I've only worked for Fortune 100 companies, but I will say probably they own that creative, that content, and your followers. Um, this is why you'll see sometimes easy place to do it. You'll see news reporters, and it'll say, you know, I don't know any of our news stations, KUOW, Brian Johnson will be their handle. That way, when they update it, they can just update it to whatever it was. But for a lot of these, you you can't take the content or the followers with you. Um, it would be in poor taste if you did that, and it's probably against your employee contract.
The next one. What are the best social media platforms to do marketing through discussions? It used to be Facebook group, but as Facebook's popularity decreases, is there another better platform? I'm talking about doing marketing via interactions and Q&As with people who have mutual interest over one thing.
Yeah, I think you could probably try something on Reddit. Reddit would be a great place for it. I would also, even though Facebook is less engaging for content, I think Facebook groups are still a really strong and really well maintained part of their platform. It feels like I see way more groups these days than do in the past. So those two could work. And then you could do something potentially on like a Threads or a Blue Sky just to see what happens. But if it needs to be a private space or private discussion, it's going to be a Facebook group or potentially a subreddit on Reddit would be helpful.
Let's see, you mentioned following your users. If your users have left X, do you, as a brand, leave X? If you're trying to get new customers, do you want to be where customers aren't in order to attract new people?
Yeah. It's one of those interesting conundrums. Social media, even though it's been around for a while, I think I would say 2007 feels like a good kind of point people look at. Your audiences will naturally grow in age, and if you're future proofing them, then you're trying to be places where they're going to be. If they leave X, you can leave X. There's this really interesting conundrum I think every brand has, which is how do I keep the people who I know already like me happy and relevant with them, and how do I grow and build a follower with these new audiences, new demographics, things like that. And so there's always this time frame of not alienating what already has proven to be a really good audience for you and also trying to find new ones. And so sometimes what you can do is like, for example, with X, you can leave that in sort of a steady state, right? Maybe it's posting content once or twice a week, asking questions, answering questions, things like that, while you go out and try something different on a new platform. That way you can start to see where new folks are too.
And looks like we're right at the top of the hour, so maybe we just take, you want to take your pick of one of these. Um,
Yeah, I think the one that makes me laugh, because I think for anybody who works in corporate America, this is something that I had to deal with it today, which is advice for when your leadership team wants you to promote everything that they do on social media. So I know this happens a lot. I know that there are folks who get really excited. You will not see me in content for name or brands. You might have seen like a hand or something, but I got made fun of for having old lady hands, and so never again social. Um, this is where having a criteria will be helpful. Having benchmarks will be helpful. This is where having data and documentation will be helpful. So the conversation I had today was with somebody within the organization who wanted to do more on LinkedIn, and they wanted more of the brand handle to actually talk to them or keep their content going. And I said, great, here's how we can help you. I said, we reserve all of our posting and reposting for our C-suite executives or for content where it's we won something, right? Like a Fast Company, Best Company thing, or a Glassdoor Best Working Environment, or an event that we've sponsored, right? So maybe we've sponsored somebody else's conference. Those get to have that top tier, we're going to share it on LinkedIn. Other than that, we will happily comment or like on your post. This allows that connection between the brand and the person's individual piece without us putting them into the space. I think the tension that often occurs is that the algorithms will favor personal interaction and content over brand interaction and content. And so sometimes folks feel like they're going to have more engagement because it's a person, and you're correct. People follow people more often than they follow brands. But I think having your executive leadership team become the face of the brand, everyone needs to really kind of take a picture or take a beat and decide if that's the right way that we want to think about doing it.
That's great. Well, thank you so much, Kelly. I want to take this opportunity to say thank you to Kelly for sharing all those wonderful hot takes and for an incredibly informative Q&A session. And thank you everyone for attending tonight and asking some incredible questions to really fuel that discussion. I thought it was really interesting to be a part of all of that. So thank you once again. This is great. And again, just a reminder that Kelly will be teaching that specialization in social media marketing offered through Professional and Continuing Education Unit. We do have that information session tomorrow night. So please do check that out if you're interested. And remember, you will receive a recording of this particular webinar as well as the slide deck. So thank you once again, and hope to see you at another webinar. Have a great night.